The shattered dream. The perfect beginning. The morning light filtered through the cafe window, casting golden shadows across the table where Emma sat, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. She could still feel the weight of the engagement ring on her finger, a beautiful sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds that caught the light every time she moved her hand. It had been 3 weeks since James proposed, and she still couldn't believe this was her life now. Emma Martinez had never been the girl who dreamed about weddings. At 28, she had built a successful career as a graphic designer, lived in a cozy apartment in the city, and prided herself on her independence. But when James walked into her life at a mutual friend's birthday party, everything changed. He was different from the others, charming without being arrogant, successful without being boastful, and he made her laugh in a way that made her forget about the world outside. Their romance had been like something out of a movie. 6 months of late-night conversations, weekend getaways to the countryside, and quiet dinners where they talked about everything and nothing. James worked as an investment banker, always dressed impeccably, always knowing the right things to say. He introduced her to art galleries she'd never visited, restaurants she'd only read about, and made her feel like the most important person in any room they entered together. "You're glowing," her best friend Sarah said, sliding into the seat across from her. Sarah had known Emma since college, through every heartbreak and triumph, and she'd never seen her friend this happy. "I can't help it," Emma laughed, twirling the ring on her finger. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and realize it was all a dream." "Have you set a date yet?" Sarah asked, sipping her tea. "We're thinking next spring. James wants something elegant but intimate. Maybe a garden wedding?" Emma's eyes sparkled as she spoke. "His mother wants to meet me this weekend. Apparently, she's very particular about family traditions." Sarah's expression flickered for just a moment. "Have you met her before?" "No, James said she's been traveling. She lives in the family estate upstate. He says she's traditional." Emma paused, sensing something in her friend's tone. "Why? Should I be worried?" No, Sarah said quickly. "I'm sure she'll love you. Who wouldn't?" The proposal that changed everything. The memory of the proposal still made Emma's heart race. James had taken her to their favorite beach at sunset, the same place they'd had their first serious conversation about the future. She thought they were just going for a walk, but when they reached the spot where the rocks formed a natural arch over the water, he'd turned to her with an expression she'd never seen before. "Emma," he'd said, taking both her hands in his. "Before I met you, I thought I had my life figured out. I had my career, my plans, everything mapped out. But you showed me that the best things in life are the ones you don't plan for." He'd gotten down on one knee right there in the sand, pulling out a velvet box that held the sapphire ring. "You're my unexpected joy, my partner, my best friend. Will you marry me?" She'd said yes before he even finished the question, tears streaming down her face as he slipped the ring onto her finger. They'd stayed on that beach until the stars came out, making promises about their future together. Now, 3 weeks later, Emma was about to meet the one person whose approval apparently mattered most. Victoria Ashford, James's mother. The cold reception. The Ashford estate was even more imposing than Emma had imagined. Iron gates opened onto a long driveway lined with ancient oak trees, leading to a stone mansion that looked like it belonged in an English period drama rather than upstate New York. James's hand squeezed hers as they pulled up to the entrance. "Don't be nervous," he said, though Emma noticed his own tension in the set of his shoulders. "Mother can be a bit formal at first, but she'll warm up to you." A butler answered the door, his face expressionless as he led them through marble hallways adorned with oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. Emma felt underdressed in her simple blue dress, despite James assuring her it was perfect. Victoria Ashford stood in the drawing room, a tall woman in her early 60s with silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon. She wore a pearl necklace and a navy suit that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent. Her eyes were the same blue as James's, but where his held warmth, hers were calculating and cold. "James, darling," she said, offering her cheek for him to kiss. Then her gaze turned to Emma, scanning her from head to toe in a way that made Emma feel like an insect under a microscope. And this must be the girl. Not your fiancée. Not Emma. Just the girl. Mother, this is Emma Martinez. Emma, my mother, Victoria Ashford. James's voice carried a warning note that Emma had never heard before. How do you do? Emma said, extending her hand. Victoria's handshake was brief and limp, as if touching Emma might contaminate her. Martinez, Victoria repeated, her lips pursing slightly. Spanish. Mexican heritage on my father's side, Emma said, keeping her smile in place despite the obvious judgment in Victoria's tone. Though I was born and raised here in New York. How diverse, Victoria said, making the words sound like an insult. She turned to James. Shall we have tea? The afternoon that followed was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of Emma's life. Victoria asked pointed questions about Emma's family, her education, her career, and her financial situation, all while maintaining a veneer of polite interest that didn't reach her eyes. She made subtle comments about suitable matches for the Ashford family, about the importance of maintaining certain standards, about how James's father would have had opinions about this engagement. James tried to steer the conversation to safer topics, but his mother bulldozed over every attempt. Emma felt herself shrinking with each passing minute, wondering how the man she loved could have come from this cold, judgmental woman. Well, Victoria said finally, setting down her teacup with a decisive clink. I suppose there's nothing to be done about it now. James has made his choice. She looked at Emma with those ice-blue eyes. I hope you understand the responsibility that comes with marrying into this family, dear. The Ashford name carries certain expectations. I understand, Emma said quietly, though she didn't understand at all. She just wanted to leave. On the drive back to the city, James was uncharacteristically quiet. I'm sorry, he finally said. She takes some getting used to. She hates me, Emma said flatly. She doesn't hate you. She's just protective. Her family has been wealthy for generations, and she's always been worried about people taking advantage of that. He reached over and squeezed her hand. She'll come around. I promise. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Victoria Ashford would never accept her. What she didn't know yet was that acceptance had never been Victoria's intention at all. The secret recording. 2 weeks later, Emma was back at the estate. James had asked her to drop off some documents for a business deal his mother was involved in. He would have done it himself, but he was stuck in back-to-back meetings all day. Emma had been hesitant, but he'd insisted it would be fine, that his mother was warming up to her. The butler let her in and informed her that Mrs. Ashford was in the study on a phone call. Emma waited in the hallway, the envelope of documents in her hand, admiring a painting of a stormy seascape. She couldn't help but notice how cold and lifeless the house felt, despite its grandeur. There were no family photos, no personal touches, just expensive objects displayed like museum pieces. That's when she heard the voices. The study door was slightly ajar, and Victoria's voice carried clearly into the hallway. Emma was about to announce her presence when she heard her own name. The Martinez girl is exactly what we need, Victoria was saying, her voice dripping with satisfaction. James has done well. Emma froze, her hand halfway to knocking on the door. Are you certain she has the inheritance? Another voice, male, probably the family lawyer. Oh yes, her grandfather's technology patents are worth at least 15 million, and she's the sole beneficiary. It transfers to her on her 30th birthday, which is in 6 months. Once James marries her, we can access those funds through the joint accounts we'll set up. Emma's blood ran cold. And if she refuses the joint accounts? The lawyer asked. Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. She won't. James is very convincing. Besides, once they're married, we'll have options. A few years of marriage, then a divorce with a favorable settlement. Or we could arrange for an accident, though that's messier. Either way, the Ashford family will recover what we've lost, and James will be free to marry someone actually suitable. Emma's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Her phone was in her purse. With trembling fingers, she pulled it out and started recording, pressing herself against the wall to avoid being seen. "What about the boy's feelings?" the lawyer asked. "He seems genuinely attached to her." "James knows where his loyalties lie," Victoria said coldly. "He understands that emotions are temporary, but family legacy is forever. He'll do what needs to be done. He always has." Emma's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Every moment of their relationship flashed through her mind. Was any of it real? Was she just a mark, a financial target in a beautiful lie? "The wedding is in 3 months," Victoria continued. "After that, we'll have full access to her accounts. I've already had the prenuptial agreement drafted to ensure maximum advantage. James will present it as a romantic gesture, protecting both their interests. She'll sign it, and that will be that." Emma had heard enough. She slipped her phone back into her purse, the recording saved, and walked silently back through the hallway. She left the envelope with the butler and drove away, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The breaking point. Emma didn't go home. She couldn't face the apartment she'd been decorating with wedding magazines and planning calendars. Instead, she drove to the beach where James had proposed, parked her car, and walked down to the sand. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It should have been beautiful, but all Emma could see was the memory of James kneeling in this same spot, making promises he never intended to keep. She sat on the sand and finally let herself cry. Great, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. How could she have been so stupid? How could she have believed that someone like James could actually love someone like her? His mother's words echoed in her mind. Someone actually suitable. Emma pulled out her phone and listened to the recording again, just to make sure it was real, that she hadn't imagined the whole horrible conversation. Victoria's voice came through clearly, cold and calculating, discussing Emma's death like she was planning a dinner party. Her grandfather's inheritance. Emma had known about it, of course, but she'd never thought much about it. $15 million from patents on technology her grandfather had developed in the early days of computer programming. It was supposed to be hers when she turned 30, just 6 months away. She'd planned to use some of it for charity, maybe start a foundation for young artists. She'd mentioned it to James once, casually, during a conversation about their families. He'd seemed interested but not overly so. Or so she'd thought. Now she realized he'd probably gone straight to his mother with the information. How long had they been planning this? Was the proposal real, or had it all been calculated from the moment James approached her at that birthday party? She remembered now how he'd asked subtle questions about her family, her background, her future plans. She'd thought he was just getting to know her. Instead, he'd been gathering intelligence. Emma's sadness began to transform into something else. Anger. Cold, sharp, and clarifying. These people had tried to use her. They'd planned to rob her, possibly even kill her, all for money. They'd underestimated her, assumed she was just a naive girl who would fall for their scheme. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The decision. As the last light faded from the sky, Emma made a decision. She wouldn't confront James. She wouldn't give Victoria the satisfaction of knowing her plan had been discovered. Instead, she would beat them at their own game. She would continue the engagement. She would play the loving fiancé. She would smile and plan the wedding and act like everything was perfect. And then, at the moment they thought they'd won, she would destroy them. Emma stood up, brushing the sand from her dress. Her tears had dried, replaced by a calm determination. She had 3 months until the wedding. 3 months to gather evidence, to build her case, to prepare for the perfect revenge. James called as she was driving home. "Hey, babe," he said, his voice warm and loving. It made her sick. "How did the delivery go?" "Fine," Emma said, keeping her voice steady. "Your mother wasn't available, so I left it with the butler." "Probably for the best," James laughed. "Less time for her to interrogate you. Listen, I was thinking we could look at venues this weekend. There's a beautiful garden estate I want to show you." "That sounds perfect," Emma said, and she meant it. Because while they were looking at venues, she would be looking for evidence. While they were planning a wedding, she would be planning their downfall. "I love you, Emma," James said. "I love you too," Emma replied. And for the first time in their relationship, she was lying. She hung up and pulled over to the side of the road. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anticipation. Victoria Ashford thought she was playing chess with a pawn. She was about to discover she'd sat down across from a queen. Emma pulled out her phone and called Sarah. "I need your help," she said when her friend answered. "And I need you to not ask questions until I'm ready to explain everything." "Emma? What's wrong? You sound strange." "I'm fine," Emma said. "Better than fine, actually. I'm clear. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Early?" "Of course." "Emma, you're scaring me." "Don't be scared," Emma said, a small smile playing at her lips. "Be excited, because we're about to pull off the revenge of the century." She hung up and started the car. As she drove home, past the city lights and through streets she'd walked with James, holding hands and making plans, Emma felt a strange sense of peace. The man she loved didn't exist. The life she'd imagined was a lie. But the woman she was becoming? She was going to be magnificent. The game had begun, and Emma Martinez was playing to win. The perfect trap. The morning after. Emma woke up the next morning with a clarity she'd never experienced before. The crying was done. The heartbreak had transformed into something sharper, more useful. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were red from tears, but behind them was a steel that hadn't been there yesterday. She made coffee and sat at her kitchen table with a notebook. At the top of the first page, she wrote, "Operation Checkmate." Then she began to list everything she knew. James and Victoria were planning to steal her inheritance through marriage. They intended to access her accounts, possibly divorce her, or worse, arrange an accident. Victoria had called her unsuitable, a mark, a means to an end. James had been lying to her from the start, or at least from the moment he learned about her money. Emma tapped her pen against the paper. She had the recording, which was a start. But she needed more. She needed evidence of their financial situation, proof that they were desperate enough to commit fraud. She needed to understand the full scope of their plan. And most importantly, she needed to make sure that when she exposed them, there would be no way for them to escape the consequences. Her phone buzzed. A text from James. "Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you tonight. Dinner at 7. Emma stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Can't wait. I love you." The lies came easier than she expected. Building the army. Sarah arrived at Emma's apartment at 8 in the morning, carrying 2 large coffees and a bag of pastries. She took one look at Emma's face and set everything down on the table. "Okay," she said. "Tell me everything." Emma handed her phone to Sarah and played the recording. She watched her best friend's expression change from confusion to shock to fury as Victoria's cold voice filled the kitchen. "That absolute witch," Sarah breathed when it finished. "Emma, we need to call the police. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. Maybe even conspiracy to commit murder." "Not yet," Emma said calmly. "One recording isn't enough. A good lawyer could argue it out of context, say Victoria was just venting, that I misunderstood. I need more evidence. I need to prove that James is in on it, that this is a deliberate scheme, not just a bitter mother-in-law talking nonsense." Sarah looked at her friend with new respect. "You've thought about this." "All night," Emma admitted. "Sarah, I need your help, but I also need you to trust me on this. It's going to get complicated, and it might get ugly." "I'm in," Sarah said without hesitation. "What do you need?" Emma smiled. "First, I need a lawyer. Someone discreet. Someone who specializes in fraud and family law. Someone who won't go running to James or his mother." "I know someone," Sarah said immediately. "My cousin Daniel works for a firm that handles white-collar crime. He's young but brilliant, and he owes me a favor." "Perfect." "Second, I need someone who can help me understand their financial situation. If they're desperate enough to do this, they must be in trouble." I need to know how deep it goes. Sarah thought for a moment. My roommate's boyfriend is a forensic accountant. He analyzes financial records for legal cases. But Emma, getting access to their records won't be easy. Leave that to me, Emma said. I'm about to become the most devoted, helpful fiancé James has ever seen. I'll have access to everything he owns. This is crazy, Sarah said, but she was smiling. I love it. What else? I need you to help me stay sane, Emma said quietly, because I'm about to spend the next 3 months pretending to be in love with a man who's planning to rob me. I'm going to have to smile at his mother, plan a wedding I'll never have, and act like my heart isn't broken. I need someone who knows the truth, someone I can be real with when I can't take the pretending anymore. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. I've got you. Always. The perfect fiancé. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma transformed herself into exactly the kind of woman James and Victoria expected her to be. Naive, trusting, and eager to please. She met James for dinner and gushed about wedding plans. She showed him Pinterest boards filled with flower arrangements and table settings. She talked about their future together, about the children they'd have, about growing old together. And she watched his face carefully, looking for any crack in his mask. He was good, she had to admit. If she didn't know the truth, she would never have suspected. He held her hand across the table. He kissed her goodbye like he meant it. He sent her sweet text messages throughout the day. He was playing his role perfectly. But Emma noticed small things now that she hadn't seen before. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes when she talked about the future. The way he changed the subject when she mentioned her grandfather. The way he encouraged her to think about joint bank accounts, retirement planning, shared investments. Every conversation was gently steering her toward financial entanglement. My accountant mentioned it might be smart to start combining our finances now, James said casually one evening over wine. It'll make things easier after the wedding. That makes sense, Emma said, taking a sip. But I want to wait until after my 30th birthday. My grandfather's inheritance transfers then, and I want to make sure everything is organized before we start merging accounts. She watched him carefully. There it was, just for a second. A flash of frustration in his eyes before he covered it with a smile. Of course, he said. That's very responsible of you. Emma made a mental note. He wanted access before her birthday. That meant they were more desperate than she thought. Meeting the lawyer. Daniel Chen's office was in a modest building downtown. Nothing like the ostentatious law firms that served families like the Ashfords. He was 32, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an intensity that reminded Emma of a hunting dog on a scent. Sarah had vouched for him, and Emma trusted Sarah's judgment. Still, she was nervous as she sat across from him in his small office, Sarah beside her for moral support. Play the recording, Daniel said without preamble. Emma did. Daniel listened without expression, occasionally jotting notes on a legal pad. When it finished, he leaned back in his chair. This is good, he said. But Ms. Chun is right. It's not enough for criminal charges. A defense attorney would argue Victoria was speaking hypothetically, that there's no proof of actual intent to commit fraud. We need more. What kind of more? Emma asked. Documentation. Financial records showing they're in trouble. Communications between James and his mother discussing the plan. Evidence that James has been deliberately cultivating this relationship with financial gain as the motive. The prenuptial agreement Victoria mentioned would be helpful. And most importantly, we need proof that they've taken concrete steps toward executing this plan. I can get all of that, Emma said with more confidence than she felt. Daniel raised an eyebrow. How? James trusts me. Or at least, he thinks I'm too naive to suspect anything. I'm going to be at his apartment constantly now. I'll have access to his computer, his phone, his papers. And I'm having dinner with Victoria this weekend. She requested it, actually. Wants to make amends for being cold at our first meeting. That's risky, Daniel warned. If they suspect you know something. They won't, Emma said firmly. Because I'm going to give them exactly what they want. A trusting, foolish girl who's too in love to see what's right in front of her. Daniel studied her for a moment, then nodded. Okay, but you need to be careful. If Victoria Ashford is willing to discuss murder, even hypothetically, she's dangerous. Don't take unnecessary risks. I won't, Emma promised. But I need them to pay for this. Not just financially. I want them exposed, humiliated, and legally accountable. Then let's make that happen, Daniel said. I'll start preparing the legal framework. You focus on gathering evidence. And Emma, document everything. Dates, times, conversations. Keep a detailed record. It'll be crucial in court. Emma left the office feeling more determined than ever. She had a plan now, and she had allies. The trap was beginning to take shape. The second dinner. Victoria's invitation to dinner arrived via a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Dear Emma, I would like to extend an olive branch. Please join me for dinner at the estate this Saturday at 7. Just us ladies. I feel we got off on the wrong foot. Emma showed the note to James, who seemed pleased. See? I told you she'd warm up to you. This is good, Emma. She doesn't do this for just anyone. Emma smiled and kissed his cheek. I'm so glad. Family is important to me. Saturday arrived, and Emma dressed carefully in a conservative navy dress and modest jewelry. She looked like the kind of daughter-in-law Victoria might approve of, which was exactly the point. Before leaving, she slipped a small recording device into her purse. Daniel had provided it, along with strict instructions on how to use it legally. The estate looked even more imposing in the fading evening light. Emma took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. The butler led her to a smaller dining room than before, more intimate, with a table set for two. Victoria appeared in a burgundy silk dress, her silver hair perfect, her smile practiced. Emma, dear, how lovely you look. Thank you for inviting me, Mrs. Ashford, Emma said, accepting the older woman's air kiss. Please call me Victoria. After all, we're going to be family. The word family sounded strained, like Victoria was forcing it out. Dinner was an elaborate affair, course after course of expensive food that Emma barely tasted. Victoria made small talk about the wedding, about James's childhood, about the Ashford family history. It was all surface-level pleasantness, but Emma could feel Victoria studying her, assessing her. I must apologize for my behavior at our first meeting, Victoria said as dessert was served. I've been protective of James since his father passed. Too protective, perhaps. But I can see that he loves you, and that's what matters. Lies, Emma thought, but she smiled warmly. I appreciate that, Victoria. I know I'm not what you expected for James, but I promise I'll make him happy. Not what I expected, Victoria repeated, and something flickered across her face. Tell me, Emma, what do you know about managing wealth? The Ashford fortune has been carefully maintained for generations. It requires a certain understanding. Here we go, Emma thought. I'm afraid I don't know much about that sort of thing, she said, playing her role perfectly. My family was comfortable but not wealthy like yours. My grandfather was successful, but I've never really paid attention to money matters. I suppose I'll have to learn. Your grandfather, Victoria said, leaning forward slightly. James mentioned he was quite brilliant. Something about technology patents. Oh yes, Emma said, keeping her voice light and casual. He developed some kind of computer programming thing back in the 70s. It's all very technical. I know there's some money involved, but I've never really asked about the details. It transfers to me on my 30th birthday, but honestly, I'm more excited about marrying James than about any inheritance. She watched Victoria's eyes gleam. The older woman thought she'd hooked a particularly stupid fish. How refreshing, Victoria said smoothly. So many young people today are obsessed with money. It's wonderful that you and James have a connection that transcends such mundane concerns. They talked for another hour, and Emma played her part perfectly. She asked Victoria's advice on wedding details. She laughed at the older woman's stories. She acted like a girl desperate for her future mother-in-law's approval. And all the while, the recording device in her purse captured every word. As Emma was leaving, Victoria touched her arm. You know, Emma, James has had a difficult few years. His father's death left some financial complexities. But marrying you will help stabilize things. It's really quite perfect. I'm glad I can help, Emma said innocently. James means everything to me. Of course he does, dear, Victoria said, her smile sharp. Of course he does. The evidence mounts. Over the next month, Emma became a fixture at James's apartment. She cooked dinner for him, stayed over on weekends, and slowly, carefully began to gather evidence. She found documents in his desk drawer, financial statements showing the Ashford family business was hemorrhaging money. Investment losses, bad deals, expensive lifestyle maintenance that far exceeded their actual income. They were drowning, keeping up appearances while scrambling for a life raft. She discovered emails between James and his mother, carefully worded but damning if you knew what to look for. The M situation is proceeding on schedule, one read. She suspects nothing. April wedding should give us access before the birthday transfer. She photographed everything, uploading files to a secure cloud storage that only she and Daniel could access. She recorded conversations where James subtly pressured her to combine their finances. She documented every moment of the elaborate lie they were living. Sarah's roommate's boyfriend, the forensic accountant, analyzed the Ashford financial records Emma had copied. His report was devastating. The family was millions in debt, using credit and reputation to maintain their lifestyle. Without a significant cash infusion soon, they would lose everything. Your inheritance isn't just convenient for them, Daniel explained when Emma met with him again. It's their only hope. They're desperate, which makes them dangerous. Good, Emma said coldly. Desperate people make mistakes. The rehearsal dinner. 2 weeks before the wedding, the rehearsal dinner arrived. Emma's family had flown in from California, her parents and younger brother all excited about the wedding. She hated lying to them, but she couldn't risk anyone knowing the truth yet. Not when she was so close. The dinner was held at an exclusive restaurant Victoria had chosen. Emma wore a white dress that James had picked out, playing the role of the perfect bride. Her family mingled with James's friends, and everyone smiled and toasted the happy couple. Victoria gave a speech, talking about how pleased she was to welcome Emma into the family, how James had found such a sweet, loving girl. Emma smiled through it all, even as Victoria's words felt like knives. James's best man, a college friend named Marcus, pulled Emma aside during dinner. Hey, can I talk to you for a second? He asked, and something in his tone made Emma pay attention. They stepped out onto the restaurant's patio, away from the noise. Listen, Marcus said, looking uncomfortable. James is my oldest friend, and I love him. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you know about his family's financial problems? Emma's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. What do you mean? Marcus sighed. Last year, James asked me for a loan. A big one. He said it was for an investment opportunity, but I did some digging. Emma, the Ashfords are broke. They're living on credit and smoke and mirrors. When James told me he was getting married, I was happy for him. But when he mentioned your inheritance, I got worried. You think he's marrying me for money? Emma asked, making her voice small and hurt. I don't want to think that, Marcus said. James is a good guy, at least he used to be. But his mother has a lot of influence over him, and I know she's desperate. I wanted to warn you. Make sure you protect yourself. Emma looked at him, this friend of James's who was risking their friendship to warn her. Thank you, Marcus, she said quietly. That means a lot. If you need anything, Marcus said, someone to talk to, or if things get weird, call me. He handed her a business card. I mean it. Emma pocketed the card and returned to the party. But Marcus's warning had given her an idea. If James's own friends suspected something, others might too. And that meant there might be more evidence out there, more people who had seen the cracks in the Ashford facade.